Good morning. It is April 10th. It is a Thursday, 2025. It is 11:30 in my locale. We're going to do a really different video today. And the reason it's going to be different is because we're going to talk about only one thing. Today would have been my mother's 79th birthday. So we're going to tell you a little bit of her story so you can kind of figure out where the heck I came from. Not Mars. Okay. My mother was born, as far as I can know, in the afternoon on April 10th, 1946, at Massachusetts General Hospital. She was normal sized, wasn't a preemie, everything was good. Okay. She was born to my grandmother, Bessie Mildred, that time Pezzatoro. Okay. My mother lived in Boston for 9 years. Okay, at our family's home on Fort Hull Street, right. The Old North Church is just down the road. You will look out. You look to the right, you could see it. Okay. At the age of 9, she was moved from Boston to a very small town in northwest New Jersey. My grandmother was remarried, and her husband, Robert Huff, he owned a Rock and Stone Company. So they moved to where the Rock and Stone Company was. Okay. My mother attended school at the Florence M. Bird School. Oddly enough, so did I. So did my sister, and so did my daughter. Okay. She never attended Long Pond School. It wasn't built yet. So I attended Long Pond. My sister attended Long Pond. My daughter graduated from Long Pond. Okay. My mother went to Newton High School. Again, a very small high school at that time. I attended Newton High School. So did my sister. And when I graduated, it was 7 small towns, and it required 183 graduates. Tiny, tiny place. Okay. So my daughter did not attend that. She went to a different school elsewhere in the state of New Jersey. Okay. So my mother was accepted to Brevard College in North Carolina. She was going to be a nurse. And after 2 years, she came home. Okay. She never totally got into it with me, other than she didn't like some of the food. Like she said to me, okra is slimy. Okay, Mom, I've tried okra. Yeah, it's slimy. But she never explained the why. I heard from my grandmother, homesick. I get a feeling that, much like my sister, not me, my sister, I get a feeling that my mom spent a little too much time having fun and not enough time hitting the books. Where I was the reverse kid. The first day I was at college, I went and bought my books. I went and got chow. I sat down and I started reading the first 3 chapters for my first class in college ever. I was a serious dude. All right. So my mother went back and she had a small apartment in northwest New Jersey. And that's somewhere in that time, and I don't know how, she met my father. Okay. So magically, here I am. My father's name doesn't have to be mentioned. I do know that she was living by herself. She was working for United Telephone, of all places in the world. And I was premature. And she had to drive in a blizzard almost 2 hours to Livingston so that I could be born. Okay. Fun fact, the obstetrician that delivered me, it was also his birthday. Okay. So I was premature, and we don't know why. We just don't know why. I mean, I don't know in 1969 whether she was continuing to smoke or not, or maybe it was my time to get out of the pool. I don't know. We'll never know. My mother said to me that she used to be, you know, a flower child. She was all sorts of peace, love, and oatmeal cookies, right? And she was all into Peter, Paul, and Mary, and Donovan, and all that. She said, until I held you the first time. She said, oh my God, there's something more important than me, and I can't live for today. I have a responsibility. 1 year later, my sister showed up. Now she had two. Okay. So there's my mom, single mom, raising two kids. Okay. And at the point of, I guess I was about 2, she moved into a house, and she was a renter with these two kids. And oddly enough, it was across the street from the house that she spent between the ages of 9 and 18. And the Rock and Stone Company was across the way. So she just went back 6 miles back to where she started. We didn't have a lot of money. Mom was still working for United Telephone. My grandmother was usually the one that was watching us if my mother couldn't do it. And, you know, we only had 2 bedrooms in that house. And so my mother thought it was important to give me a bedroom and my sister a bedroom. And my earliest memory is her sleeping on a folding couch in the living room. Later on, she bought a day bed, and that day bed was in the dining room, kind of like a settee. Okay. But things were really rough. We didn't have a lot. When I was about 4, my mother decided to go to cosmetology school, a place called Wilford Academy. I'm not even sure it's there anymore. She did very, very well. So well that when she graduated, they immediately hired her and said, now you're teaching cosmetology 101. They put her right in the classroom. She did this for 10 years. In order to take care of us, my mother also, and I can remember this day after day, people would come up the stairs, Saturdays and Sundays. People would come up the stairs, and my mother would take one of the kitchen chairs, put it in the kitchen, and she would do people's hair in the kitchen. Cut the hair, colors, everything else. She had nothing else to go to, so she had to wash her hair in the sink. And I remember every night that she was done with that, completely plastering that with bleach to clean it all up before she made us dinner. Later on, 2 of her students decided they were going to rent a building about a quarter mile away from the house. It was a husband and a wife, and they both had graduated. They were both students of my mom. So my mother had, spoken to them, and now she stopped cutting hair in the kitchen, except for mine, of course. Maybe my sister's, of course. And she would rent out a chair at this salon. So I remember, Wednesday nights, she would come home, make, dinner would probably be made the night before. My grandmother was there. She'd work until 9 o'clock. Friday nights until 7, so she'd come home at 5 o'clock, and then she would just kiss us on the faces, and then she'd run over. She'd work for 2 hours, take care of a couple of clients. And then, of course, Saturday afternoons and Sundays. Okay. So we didn't see her as much as I wanted to. I saw her all the time, but she was always bouncing back and forth. Okay. Eventually, these 2 students very sadly decided to divorce. And they approached my mother, who was not happy teaching. I'm not sure what it was. The people I guess she was working with were starting to tick her off, which sounds like her son, right? And they said, do you want to buy the business? So they were going to sell her everything. The stations, the chairs, combs, rollers, a couple of scissors, because she already had one of her own, 2 of her own. And the most important piece of that business, the client list. And the color box. The color box was every single client that got their hair colored, they would write down the mixture, little of this, little of that, little of it. So you got your own like custom crafted color just for you. And that was really what she was buying. And I remember that the first weekends that she had the business, we were already up. It was a Saturday, and I don't know how she did it, but she had already gotten 6 gallons of paint. So, and my sister and I spent an entire day doing nothing but painting that shop. Okay. And then we got to business on scrubbing the floors because my mom was not happy with the way that they looked and wanted them cleaner. So the first round we did all by hand, all 3 of us. The second round, she was able to rent a machine so we could pull all that out. So she opened her shop, and she actually hired one of the other teachers that was at the school, and they worked together for many years. Okay, so now I'm about 11. Okay, and I think she worked with that woman until my 16, right? And there were 2 other chairs. So my mom had hired somebody else who was an old family friend who went to school for this, and she also left that last chair open, and she let that be the rental chair. Just like she had the opportunity, she gave that opportunity as well. Of all the weird things in the world, my godparents' daughter was the one that was doing, what do they call that? Esthetician. She was doing the nails. So it was all in the family, you know. I was the guy that did the light bulbs and cleaned the floor and, you know, fix the stuff, replace the faucet if the sink wasn't working right, that type of thing. I was the facility guy at 13. And my sister was the one that ran the front desk. So that was pretty much what we did for quite a while. I was about 14 or 15. Things started to get really good. And my mom's success got out. And, you know, I do remember the first night she had the book. For a couple of nights, my mother called every single number in that book and went, "Hi, my name is Noma, and I'm letting you know that I am buying your happiness. And, you know, Bev and Rich, the previous owners, have sold the business to me, and I really want to earn your business. Please come in and let me earn your business." And I saw very few people ever walk away from her. She was good at what she did, and the kids loved her. Okay. Busiest times were obviously holidays, Christmas, Thanksgiving, prom season, graduations. She was very demanding at those times because, you know, weddings, that type of thing. She was demanding because the traffic was really high. There were people constantly in the shop all day long. Her regulars would come in the morning, and then all the girls would come in because there were 5 or 6 local high schools. So it was all hands on deck, one after the other. I didn't have to show up because I was a facility manager, and I already had 2 jobs and was going to high school. So there you go. So what she did was I would go in after work and make sure everything's good. Trash cans are clean, everything's good, lights are on, everything's fine. She'd leave me a little love note, take care of this, do this, do this. Weddings. Okay, weddings were different because they started early. That meant all of her staff had to be there by 6:30 in the morning. All of them. I was different. My sister had to be there if there was a desk to run. I was different. And that's because she would find me the night before if I was at one of my jobs, or where we, you know, sit me down at the dinner table and hand me the key and go tape up the windows. Give me the key back when you're done. So I must have been 16 at this point. I'd have to go and take that big brown paper. She had a big bay window with a whole bunch of plants. I'd have to tape that whole bay window. I would have to tape her door, which was floor to ceiling glass. So it was all papered so you couldn't see in. And then I'd have to go home and handle it. Sometimes I was walking home in the dark. sometimes riding my bike, but it was here's the key. All right. And then I would remember every Saturday morning, her sitting there. She would have her coffee. She'd have her cigarette. She'd get a shower. She'd do her makeup, always at the kitchen table, because that's all we ever had. And then she would sit down, and she would hand write out everybody's paycheck. Put it in the little book, put them in the envelope, and then she would leave at about 7:30 in the morning. Okay. Weddings were different. Weddings, she took care of that stuff the night before because she was going to be there at 6:15 to put on the coffee. I never understood why she wanted me to tape the windows until finally one day she called me and said, before you go to work, I need you to get me a half a gallon of milk. So it was the grocery store that I was working at was right around the corner, so it was easy. I just walked in, got the milk, walked over to my mom, went to open the door. My mother slammed the door on my arm and said, give me the milk. And then shut and locked the door. I didn't see her. I just had a bruise. So when I went home that night, I said, why do we do this? Why is this going on? And she said, honey, you know why. She said, these are brides. This is the mother of the bride. This is the bride. There's girls walking around. They're not dressed. She said they're getting their nails done. They're getting their hair done. They're getting their makeup done. She said they're not wearing their clothes. They're half dressed. And I went, well, maybe I should stop by next Saturday. And that's when she gave me that look. And she said, nice try. So that was fun. So my mom did this for 25 years. And she pretty much ran that business by herself. When I went to college, I would come home, say, hi, Mom. And there was always a laundry list of things to do at the shop and a laundry list of things to do at home. So most of my time when I would come home from college was not spent with my friends. It was trimming bushes and fixing stuff in the shop, and I didn't mind it one bit because I just wanted to be with my mom and just have dinner with her. That's all I really wanted. There were times when I was very early in college that she would drive down and get me almost every weekend. It was 2 hours out, 2 hours down, 2 hours back. I know that trip. I used to have to make with my daughter a whole lot. Okay, so I appreciate that, Mom. So when she was about 43, that's when her health started to have some troubles. It's very young. So turns out that she was having chest pains and they were using nitroglycerin patches and all this stuff. And they finally looked at her and they said to her, you know, you need a triple bypass. Now, I only ever remember my mother sick a couple of times. Once, when I was very young, she got encephalitis. And they put her in an ambulance, and my grandmother was holding on to my sister and I. We were very upset. One time she had to have her gallbladder out. I was about 8, but that was like one day. And then this. And this was really rocky because my mother was terrified of surgery. Terrified. So they were able to fix her up. Turns out that they said that this was being caused from a number of factors. Genetics is number one. Fortunately, I didn't get it. My problem with my heart, totally different story. Number 2, she suffers microvascular disorder, which meant her vascularity system was built for a person 4'8" and she was 5'1". And the other one they said is other factors, caffeine, tobacco, that kind of thing. So she got pretty good with that. And then, you know, we 6 or 7 years, we were just doing it. We were just keeping an eye on stuff, right? And then at about the age of 50, 51, she magically got diabetes type 2. So now it's another shock to the system. And she's still going to work 6 days a week. And on her day off, she's doing all the running around, picking up the supplies unless I was there. And then she would hand me the keys and go get them. And I would just do it. So at that point, you know, her health just kind of, you know, her heart was okay, but her vascularity wasn't. And so she had a number of stents put in, and, you know, they were trying to backfill that situation. When she was 60, we took her for her 60th birthday to Tavern on the Green. And boy, she had a good time. It was probably the fanciest thing she'd ever been to, I don't know. But we always try to celebrate her 55th birthday, 60th birthday, right? her 65th birthday, okay, it was rather quiet. She was not feeling well. She was not doing well. She was having neuropathy in her feet, so we didn't take her out for that one. We did it at home. Okay, and we just put the kids together and us and a couple of friends, and we enjoyed ourselves. Okay. 1 month after that, I got a phone call. Now, mind you, by this time, it's 65. By this time, my mother had to shutter the shop. Her health was not doing well. So that 25 years and a month, that was done. And we had to move everything out of the shop. I got a call one afternoon that said, you have to go to the hospital right away. Now, I was, in an odd twist, I bought the house I was growing up in. Okay? And I improved it, and I was doing mulch with my daughter and one of her friends. Not easy, because you have to bring 20 bags of mulch up a 45-degree gradient hill for about 45 feet and then dump it. Okay? Not like Marlton, where they just dumped it in a pile. It was level ground. So I ran to the hospital, and they stopped me. Hold on, we're going to talk to you about your mom. Blah, blah, blah. My sister was there. My daughter was being watched by somebody else. And I said, where is she? And they would not let me in the room at all. They came to me 5 minutes later and said, I'm so very sorry, she's passed. I sat in the waiting room for 5 minutes. I could have held her hand as she moved on. They did not let me. And you don't want to know, they had to call security because I was so upset that that doctor did not let me in the room say goodbye to my mother. So, other little tidbits about my mom, other than she was very direct and very straightforward. Okay, she was kind. She was very kind. Feed stray animals, this and that. But you didn't want to get on the wrong side of her, because she would have just taken one look at you and she would have went, you're an idiot. Get out. I don't have time for this. I got kids to raise. I got dinner to make. I get out. Okay? Kind of like her kid. Just doesn't put up with it. I found out years later, twice a year, she would say to us on a Sunday, she would say, I'm not going to the shop. If we were old enough, she was like, mind yourselves. If we weren't old enough, my grandmother was there. And she never discussed where she went. She never told us. She just said, mind the farm. That's it. I found out years later that twice a year, she went to the juvenile correction facility and she cut all the kids' hair for free. She said, just because they did something wrong doesn't mean that they don't have to have any dignity. And I think she went to school with the warden or something like that. But they had some connection. I also would realize every so often my mother would go out at night and she would say, I'll be back. I'll be back in about an hour and a half. She never told us where she went. Again, it wasn't a state secret. It was just like, dinner's done. You do the dishes. You set the coffee up. I'll be back in an hour. Found out that those times that she would just disappear in an evening, usually on a Thursday, sometimes on a Friday, she was going to the funeral home. One of her clients died, and the family wanted my mother to do their hair one last time. She, of course, charged nothing for that. Okay. She was exceptional in making sure everybody was okay. She was a wonderful human being. Her music taste changed over time. Like I said, when I was born, she said I was a flower child, and I was Peter, Paul, and Mary, and Donovan. And and I still remember her Saturdays or any day that she wasn't around. The TV was usually off. She had a double LP version of Jesus Christ Superstar. She used to play that all the time. I could probably do most of the songs from my head at that point. Later on, as we got older, she got younger. So as my sister became the heavy metal princess, my mother is now listening to Def Leppard and Metallica and AC/DC. She loved AC/DC. She would blast the stereo while she cleaned the house. I don't know how the dogs managed it. We always had a dog. My first babysitter was a dog named Kid. He died when I was 3. After that, there was a shepherd named Bruno. Big German shepherd. I could ride him like a horse. He unfortunately got hit by a car. Then there was Rags, who was a mixed breed. Just scruffy dog. You know, every kid needs to have one. And then after Rags died, I was maybe 18, 19, I don't remember. My mother had, good connections with breeders in the area because obviously she was cutting their hair. And for some reason, they would call her and ask if she wanted the runt. So her first runt was a German shepherd named Odie. Okay, she pretty much would bring him home, tear their papers up. She didn't care anymore. She just get him fixed, and that's the end of that. Then she had another one named Max. Okay, again, same breeder, another runt. So here's these 220-pound dogs running around the house. And it wasn't the biggest house in the world, but let me tell you, nobody messed with her. Because if you came to the door, you just saw those 2 dogs, and you just went, not today. Odie died, natural causes, and Max was there, and so Max ended up dying of natural causes. So she got another dog named Jägermeister, yet again, same breeder. This time it's a white shepherd. He was about 130 pounds. Okay, she really liked German shepherds. That's all I can say. She felt that the breed was very protective and very easy to train. Okay, but she loved all animals. She was not big on snakes. She hated snakes. She did not like reptiles. And you know what? She didn't really like cats. She thought they were sneaky. And, she said, and they play with their poo, is what she would say to me. I miss her every day. And she taught me so many ways of looking at things properly. Again. And she was very patient. She would let you run yourself out of steam before she told you were a jerk. Okay? There was one time I remember somebody had a harebrained idea. And my mom said, okay, it's a good idea. How are you going to do it? And they talked themselves into a corner until it became, but we're all going to have to pay. And she went, if you want it and it's a good idea, you pay for it. I'm paying for my kids. You pay for your ideas. Don't make me do it. I didn't choose that. That was good. Let's see. She did very briefly. She was a member of the zoning board in town. They really needed somebody, and she'd been there for so long, since the age of 9, that they just went, we know you. She went there, she gave it a shot, and she left very quickly. She said, these people are jerks, and they just want to spend your money, and they want to get inside your house. No. Mom was very private, just like me. Okay? So the apple does not fall far from that tree. Now, I will tell you that beyond helping shape how I look at the world and shape how I, for some extent, deal with others. Because I think my mom, when we never had a lot of company, I think my mom was a hermit like me, the hermitess. So, because we never really had any company. So her downtime was me, my sister, sometimes my grandmother, very few friends. Very few. And I don't ever remember her going out with her friends. Going out shopping, nope, didn't happen. My mother was completely devoted to me, my sister, the house, and the business. And that's it. Never dated after my father. She just, when I asked her years later, she just went, it never felt right. Okay. So I will tell you, on her 79th birthday that I missed her terribly. I will give you the good stuff. I would cut my arm off right here if I could just sit with her for 10 more minutes and talk to her. Because at the end, it was very hard because I told you, she got sick. So she was in a rehabilitation center. She was in a nursing home. She got C. diff. She got MRSA. It was not an easy run. And it was hard because we couldn't even really bring her home because we didn't know if she was going to be able to climb the stairs or what. It was very difficult. The other thing I will tell you is this, and this may surprise you, maybe not. Kerry never met her. She died about 3 or 4 years before I met Miss Kerry. And I think her mother and my mother would have gotten along, but I'm never quite sure if Kerry and my mother would have gotten along. Kerry's very kind. She's very, very sweet. And she was very much very compassionate. My mother was the whole, get up and do it yourself. If we help them, they're just going to ask for help again. If they're so good, they'll figure it out. My mom was a very hands-off person. She was not the person that sat around and talked about your feelings. If you needed to, she would. However, for the most part, her answer was really the same thing. It was, get up, wash your face, brush your teeth, get it together. This is the way that life works. And you're going to have to, some days you're going to be able to skip through a meadow, and some days you're going to have to fight uphill. But there's nothing you can do about it. How you respond to that is the most important thing. But other than that, this is a very long video. So I'm going to say that it's a little different. So happy birthday, Mom. I love you. I miss you. And I know if she was looking down at the world today, the way people are, the dopey ideas, the stupid nonsense, I really honestly think she'd be sick to her stomach. She would be absolutely ill. She would be doing a lot of, what the is this noise about? Who came up with it? She would not have approved of the decline of society, because we were always raised to be very polite and very good. And she saw where I lived when I bought my first house, and it was Norman Rockwell time. It was the society I was raised to be in, not the one I'm in right now. So yeah, I think that I would say disappointed is one word, angry would be another, and the third would just be disgusted. She wouldn't mind. She was the one that if you came in and wanted a purple mohawk, my mom would be like, cool, man, this is the 80s. Let's have some fun. I got to talk to your mom and dad first. And if mom and dad approved, you got a purple mohawk. And she thought it was rocking and fun. Not the animals today. I don't think she would have approved very much. And I think that she probably would have done what I do, is isolate herself from that the majority of the time. All right, 33 minutes in, we are out of here. So I just, again, happy birthday, Mom. Now you know the story of No Mo Elizabeth Hoff. And, yeah. Again, apples don't fall far from the tree. No, my sister fell a little far from the tree. But this apple didn't fall far from the tree. And I'm very proud to say that I am her son.